Today we're doing an oil change on the Chevy Sonic RS. So this will be the first oil change that I'm doing on this car since I've owned it. So let's get this thing up on the ramps and get into it. Alright, so like I said, this will be my first time doing an oil change on this car. I have done a lot of oil changes on the Chevy Aveo and stuff like that. Back when I used to run a tire and lube shop, it was one of our main vehicles that we had to do oil changes on. Something I do remember from them is the drain plugs are really stupid. They're like an Allen key type drain plug, and every single time you try to loosen it off, it would round. So I remember replacing a lot of those drain plugs with regular drain plugs, so I'm hoping this car doesn't have that, but I won't know until I get underneath the car and take a look. But that's basically the only thing that I'm dreading on this car right now for an oil change. Let's have a look in the engine bay and see what we're dealing with. So I'll do a quick update before I get started on the K&N intake. So as you know, I've done a review on this and an install video. The install went pretty good. This is about a month and a half after I've had it installed, and I'm still pretty happy with it. The only issue that I really faced on it was the rubber gasket on the side of the heat shield was actually rubbing against the firewall here, and it rubbed right through, and it actually started making a noise. And that's the only way I noticed it, was when I heard it just around 50 kilometers an hour or so. I could hear it start to vibrate, and it actually chewed through some of the paint under here too. So I'm gonna have to touch that up because I don't want it to rust. So what I ended up having to do is just kind of bend the heat shield in a bit. So now it's not making any contact with the firewall, and it seems to be pretty quiet now. The other thing I noticed was this bolt right here, which has a nylon nut from the other side, that came loose somehow. So I tightened that one right back up again, and that's kind of where some of the vibration noise was coming from also. But other than that, I think it's still working pretty good. It still sounds great, and I'm happy with it. So as you can see, I have removed the plastic cover from the top of the valve cover. That's just my personal preference. I thought it was ugly. I prefer it this way. So got the oil cap here with the 5W30 Dexos specification on it. And if we come down here, you can see this black cover right down here. That's where the oil filter will be. So it's a internal oil filter, and you access it from the top, so shouldn't be too bad as long as the intercooler piping and that isn't too much in the way. So let's get started on that. So first thing I'm going to do before getting under the car is take the oil cap off, and I always set it right here, so that way I can't close the hood without installing the cap, and I will never forget to put the cap on because I can't close the hood. With the cap off, the oil will drain a lot quicker because the air can get in through the top. So now I'm going to get underneath the car and see what we're dealing with. Alright guys, so I'm under the car now. Look how easy this is. This is the bottom of the oil pan here, and we got the drain plug, which is just your standard wrench that'll fit on there, and it even has a torque spec right here, 14 Newton meters, so that's pretty cool. I'm gonna find out what size that is, and we'll get that loosened off. Alright, so turns out it's a 10 millimeter. So I got my drain pan underneath, and let's see if we can get this thing loose. Oh, I think that's a little more than 14 Newton meters. Okay, I can feel that starting to round off, so I'm going to grab a ratchet with a socket on it, and hopefully that works a bit better. That worked a bit better. Alright, so it's all drained out and I'm just tightening it back up now. And we don't want to go too tight on this. There is a rubber O-ring on the drain plug itself. So it shouldn't need to be too tight to make a good seal. And we don't want it to seize on there and then next time I go to do an oil change it'll round off. So this should be good. Just wipe off the excess with a rag. That way if I see any leaks afterwards I'll know that I need to make it a bit tighter. But alright, that should be good down here. Let's get back up top. Okay, so next step is to remove the oil filter, which I can see is right down here. That is a 24mm. Socket fits on there really nicely. And now this intercooler hose is kind of in the way, but it pushes out of the way pretty easily. Socket on there and it should just loosen right off. Yeah, just like that. Okay, so now I'm ready to take the filter out. I got it all loosened off. Now I recommend putting a rag underneath. I even use 2 rags because this will drip and it'll just make it a lot cleaner and easier to clean up afterwards. So let's see how easily I can get this out of here with one hand. Alright, that wasn't so bad. Alright, so there's the filter. And we'll get this replaced with a new one. Alright, so here's the oil, and here's the filter that I'm going to be using today. I'm using Quaker State, not because I'm sponsored or anything, but simply because Walmart had oil on sale and Canadian Tire had oil filters on sale. The Sonic recommends, at the very least, a synthetic blend. I always go full synthetic anyway, it's just always been my preference. So let's get this filter changed out. So this should just pull off of here. Yeah, just like that. And this will be the new filter. So this end will go on the top of the filter cap. Just click in there. And always change the O-ring too. So when you buy one of these internal filters, they will supply an O-ring as well. So make sure you install that. Sometimes you gotta use a small flathead screwdriver or something. Or one of these poker things should do the trick too. Alright, so O-ring is off. New one is on, and I like to coat the O-ring in fresh oil also. That'll just help it seal a bit better. Alright, now this is ready to go, so we'll put it back in the car. You don't want to make it too tight because remember this cap is made out of plastic and it will crack if you reef on it too hard. So just enough so that it seats, because remember there is a rubber O-ring in there and that's what causes it to seal. So it doesn't have to be overly tight. So just snug and that should be good enough. So just out of curiosity, I wanted to know why this oil cap riser is on here. To me it looks really ugly, but there was just this locking device on it that prevented it from turning, so I removed that with the flathead screwdriver, which allows this to just twist off like an oil cap. And I realized that there's the cam right there and the oil cap will not fit, so that is why that riser's there. So fun fact. Now let's throw the funnel in there and get this thing full of oil. I read the specifications. I believe this thing takes 4.2 quarts or 4 liters of oil. So I'll probably start with about 3.5 liters, check the dipstick, and then go from there. Okay, so that's just over 3.5 liters. Now, checking the dipstick won't be extremely accurate because the car is on an incline right now. But as long as there's something showing on the dipstick, then there will be enough oil in the crankcase that we can get it off the ramps and get it level. And that'll also give it time to fill up the oil filter with oil as well. So yeah, we're just about at the full line now. So I'm going to start up the car and drive it off the ramps, and then we can check the oil level again. Alright, the Sonic is back on the ground. I'm going to check the oil level again. I'm sure I'm going to have to add some because it's only 3.5 liters in there, and it calls for about 4, so let's get this thing topped up. Alright, so it's about 3/4 of the way full now. So probably have to add about another 1/2 liter and then we should be full. So let's do that right now. So that right there makes it exactly 4 liters. And we are right on the fill line, so that is perfect. Alright, so with that done, I always like to check underneath the vehicle just to see if there's anything leaking, and everything looks to be okay. Do a quick double check, make sure everything's put back on. So we got our oil cap put back, dipstick is put back in properly, and I didn't touch anything else, so we should be good to close the hood. Alright, so on these Sonics you have to reset the oil life, which I've already done, but basically what you do is you turn the ignition on. There is a reset button on the side here where your menu button is. Hold that in for about 5 or 6 seconds and then it resets it. Alright, well that's going to be it for today's video. I know oil changes aren't that interesting, but it's something that has to be done, right? So if you like the video, make sure you give us a thumbs up. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Give us a share if you don't mind. We're trying to hit 500 subscribers. We're getting pretty close, so any help would be great. And we'll see you next time.